What is up, guys? Eric here from Real Film Reviews, bringing you another movie review, this time for the new Kristen Wiig film, Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is the new reboot/remake of the 1984 classic of the same name, this new one starring Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, Kate McKinnon, and Leslie Jones as the four Ghostbusters. Now, this film follows a plot pretty similar to the first film, where four people come together who all believe in ghosts, and they decide that after a bunch more ghosts have started to show up in New York City that they need to do something about it, so they invent technology to trap and capture ghosts and then basically become the Ghostbusters. But then, of course, a massive plot happens and a bunch more ghosts appear and a bunch of craziness happens. Before this movie even came out, a lot of people have been saying that they weren't even going to bother seeing it. They're giving negative reviews on IMDb, and it's just sort of getting a lot of bad press. But at the same time, there are a lot of people saying that's really stupid if you say you're not going to see it, because that means you're not even going to give it a chance. Now, I decided to give this film a chance. The trailer was underwhelming to me, but I enjoy most of the stars in this film, and I think Paul Feig as a director is pretty good, so I wanted to go see this film. And to be fair, maybe this film is not as great as the original Ghostbusters, but I do not believe that this film does anything so terrible that it completely destroys the name Ghostbusters. Now, to start with, this movie is pretty funny. I laughed a decent amount of times. There were some jokes that I felt missed very hard where no one in the theater laughed at all, but I think as a whole, it was a decently funny movie. I don't think I'd put it in the top 5 funniest movies of the year so far, but it was fine. Even though this movie has a fairly similar story to the first Ghostbusters, and even the second Ghostbusters for that matter, I did feel that they made some very interesting changes to the story, the addition of different characters, ghosts, and things of that nature, and I thought that it actually worked very well in the setting of this film. Effects-wise in the film, I felt that it went kind of 50-50. Some of the effects I thought looked very cool, especially in the beginning and the opening ghosts, but then at the end when there were lots and lots of ghosts on the screen and they had to utilize more and more green screen, I felt that the effects got a little bit worse and it became a little more obvious that they were just CGI effects in the film. But I really think that if you have anything as big as the scope of the end of this film is, that's going to happen. However, there were a couple scenes in particular that I was like, that one looks, exceptionally fake compared to the rest. The two best people in this film are Kate McKinnon and Chris Hemsworth. I think that Kate McKinnon gives easily the best comedic performance in this film. I absolutely love Kate McKinnon on SNL, and I hope that she slowly but surely makes her way into Hollywood to be in more and more films, because I really think that she's one of the next greats to come out of Saturday Night Live. And also Chris Hemsworth, I think at this point he's solidified himself as a star in Hollywood, and in this movie, even though he plays this extremely dim-witted character, he's probably the second funniest character in the whole film, which is one of the things that I found very strange about this movie. Going into it, they hire these 4 actresses that are all very funny people on their own, but then obviously there's got to be some give and take there because everyone can't be the funny character. And I felt that Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig were surprisingly not that funny in this film. I really enjoy Melissa McCarthy in Spy and Bridesmaids, and I really enjoy Kristen Wiig in Bridesmaids as well, and I was surprised that in this film they sort of took a back seat in terms of comedy. Kristen Wiig, I'd say, was pretty funny, but Melissa McCarthy really didn't have that many jokes in the whole film. And then as for Leslie Jones, I feel that Leslie Jones always sort of plays the same character in everything she's ever in, which is just Leslie Jones. In SNL, every sketch she's in, she's sort of the same character. In this, she was sort of the same character she's always been on SNL, which isn't necessarily a negative. She still has some funny moments because of that. Now, my big issues with this film, besides the fact that some of the effects were bad and some of the jokes totally missed, you're gonna have that regardless, were the fact that this movie's sort of half in between a reboot and a remake, because there are some scenes in this film that are pulled almost exactly out of the first Ghostbusters film. There are scenes where when I was watching it, I was like, this is the same scene, you just changed the characters and you slightly adjusted the setting of the scene, but it's the same situation, more or less. They made it fit their story, but they didn't change much about what's happening. And it didn't bother me really, because I think everyone going into this didn't really know if this was supposed to be a reboot or a remake. To me, it falls in a middle ground. I think it still leans towards reboot, but it did feel remakey. And the other big issue was I felt that the cameos used in this film by the original Ghostbusters, it's not a spoiler, everyone knows that they are in this. The original Ghostbusters and original characters from the first film, some of them felt forced, while others I thought did, fit in with the story very well. The ones that felt forced, I was kind of just like, why are you pushing and trying to force this nostalgia down my throat to make me like this more? I'm already enjoying this film as is. You don't need to force these other characters into this movie just to give them a one-liner that sort of makes us go, ha, that's Dan Aykroyd. Like, I don't need that to enjoy this film. I think that this movie is going to be pretty split down the middle. I think that there will be a lot of people that are going to absolutely detest this movie, thinking that it ruins the legacy of Ghostbusters, and I think that that's a little ridiculous to say that a movie that is not attached to that film in any way besides its name and the fact that it's sort of the same story. This movie isn't a sequel. In this universe, that movie didn't happen. So that Ghostbusters, it's still its own thing. And I understand the anger over now it's Ghostbusters 1984 and Ghostbusters 2016. I understand that anger, but at the same time, I feel like it's a very petty thing to be upset about. And then I think there will be people that will lean all the way over saying this is even better than the first one because they don't want to come off like people that are just hating on this film because of the first Ghostbusters. I don't feel either one of those people are right. I fit right in the middle, and I think there will be a decent amount of people like me in that sense. I don't think this movie's amazing. I think the first Ghostbusters is an amazing film that was perfect for the time it came out, and because of that, it will stay as an absolute classic. And I don't think this film also entirely tarnishes the name. I think that this movie has issues, and it's far from as good as the first one, but it's not a terrible movie, and if you're a fan of Ghostbusters, sure, there's a chance you'll go to this and you'll absolutely hate it, because maybe you're a humongous Ghostbusters fan and you will be on that side that thinks it tarnished the name. But if you just like Ghostbusters, like me, Ghostbusters isn't like a top 10 favorite film for me, but as a kid I watched it and I really enjoyed Ghostbusters growing up, and I drank Ecto Cooler as a kid. But going to this movie, I wasn't like, I absolutely detest this, it shouldn't have been made, I hate everything about it. I think everyone that judges this movie off of its trailer and because of that refuses to see the film will miss out on something. They'll miss out on a fun reboot of a classic film, and even though, as I've said before, it's not as good as the first, this movie will give you some laughs, and it will give you some nostalgic feels of the original Ghostbusters at times. I'm gonna give Ghostbusters a B-. This isn't the best comedy of the year. This movie is just sort of fun. You go to it and you'll leave the theater and you'll say, well, that was kind of fun. When I left the theater, that's how I felt. You will get a decently funny movie with a good performance from Kate McKinnon and a good performance from Chris Hemsworth, and you'll get some nostalgic feels of the original, but it's not gonna blow you away. You're not gonna walk out of the theater saying, Ghostbusters 2016 is the greatest thing I've ever seen. That's not what's gonna happen. And that's totally fair. It's very hard to imagine a film as good as Ghostbusters 1984 being remade to be just as good as that film, because that film came out at a time where it fit so perfectly and somehow they brought together the perfect stars to make that movie as great as it was. And to recreate that is close to impossible. So I think this movie does as good as it can to make a decent film. And then because of that, I'd say if you're a fan of Ghostbusters, if you're a fan of SNL and these ladies that are in this film, if you're a fan of Chris Hemsworth, if you're a fan of Paul Feig, go check this film out. You will laugh. You will have some fun with it. Maybe you'll love it. Maybe you'll hate it. I make no promises. This movie is going to be very decisive, and because of that, I cannot recommend it to any one particular group. All I can say is go see it if you have interest in seeing it, but make sure you go in with the mindset that this film is not going to be as good as the original Ghostbusters. But just because it isn't as good as that doesn't mean it's immediately a horrible trash heap. Well guys, as always, I'm Eric. If you enjoyed this review, please do like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of Ghostbusters, share everything we do here on Real Film Reviews, and I hope to see you guys later.